briefing for Monday, the 22nd of May. I'm Stephen Ridgway. The Python package index maintainers have temporarily disabled sign up and package upload because of an ongoing attack. So they have noticed a significant increase in the number of threat actors attempting to register and malicious code being uploaded, and whilst they work on this, they have disabled logins and they have disabled uploads. By the time you hear this, it may be that that's all been fixed. Not sure, haven't checked myself first thing this morning. However, it is worth being aware if you use the Python package index as a, it's very popular. If you use it, just be aware there has been a significant amount of malicious activity associated with it recently. So beware of, especially beware of a couple of packages. One, Node.js encrypt agent, and another Node.js cookie proxy agent. Which are, oh no, hang on, no, I'm so sorry, those are NPM issues, not the Python issues. So yeah, watch out, Python. Python package index has been attacked. Will be sorted soon, I am sure. So, malware on mobile phones. So, I mean, we're all aware of the fact that malware gets uploaded. I'm literally just talking about Python program in Python index, but Google Play Store or Apple App Store, it is, despite very good attempts and from the owners of these repositories, malware finds its way in. However, there's an even more malicious way of distributing malware, and that's simply to embed it in the phone whilst it's being made. So there has been an uptick of this, especially on Android mobile devices at the lower price range, partly because there's been a kind of price war around people writing firmware, to the point where firmware is being given away for free by some firmware authors. Consequently, the amount of time and effort being put into checking this stuff is now very limited. There's no money in it anymore. So yeah, malware then has been hidden within firmware, which just then gets distributed out as original equipment manufacturers are putting together the phones in the factories. It is generally possible to find such malware, but it is harder if the malware works at a sort of kernel level, equivalent of BIOS level on a PC. This issue, by the way, is equally, it's not solely limited to Android on phones and Android devices. You can also get similar sorts of issues on PCs, cheap PCs, BIOS malware. And if these things are deep enough in the system, then they will avoid the majority of anti-malware, antivirus detection solutions. So what can you do about it? Well, try to buy from reputable manufacturers rather than buying from the cheapest you can find. Normally malware free things like iPads, Nexus 7s, Kindles, stuff you can buy from Apple or Google or Amazon or whoever. PCs from the usual crowd, HP, Dell, Acer, Sony, and so on. Not that we recommend any particular manufacturers, blah blah blah, but the bigger manufacturers are more likely to be secure. If you're buying something cheap off the internet, don't necessarily trust it straight out of the box. CapCut is a video editing tool, which is the official video editor from ByteDance. ByteDance being the TikTok people. It supports, music mixing, color filters, animations, slow-mo effects, picture-in-picture, stabilization, a whole load of stuff. Very popular. However, especially due to the fact that the ByteDance applications are banned in some countries. This has spawned a whole load of lookalike sites which claim to get round the ban. However, be warned, many of these are in fact installing a Trojanized version of CapCut. So if you are looking to get this particular video editing software, make sure you are getting it from a legitimate source. There is a short list of offending websites which would at the time of writing, it says the domains have been taken offline, but you get a feel for the sorts of things that sorts of names that people are using. It is a bit of a whack-a-mole trying to keep on top of domain names associated with malicious stuff, but there we go. So yeah, be aware. There's campaigns out there to get you to install dodgy versions of CapCut. Now, one of the most interesting things that I've read over the weekend is that researchers at Tencent Labs have demonstrated that fingerprint authentication on modern Android smartphones is susceptible to brute force attacks. Now, okay, so we'll start with brute force attacks. Generally, you have a lockout and X number of failed attempts, locks the device, wipes the device, whatever it may be. However, these researchers have managed to exploit 2 0 days, one named cancel after match fail and match after lock, which basically allows the attacker to attempt an unlimited number of fingerprints. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. Passwords have to be exactly right. You've either typed them in right or you haven't typed them in right. Two-factor authentication, you've either put in the right code or you've not put in the right code. Fingerprint authentication relies on a probabilistic algorithm. So how many hits does it take before the fingerprint is determined to be good enough to let you in? Right. That's partly because your fingerprint isn't absolutely static. If you do things like, I don't know, if you've recorded your fingerprints onto your phone and then went and sandpapered your fingerprints wouldn't be the same, right? So not that you would do that, but you know what I mean. If you've got cuts or whatever it might be on your fingers, or all sorts of things can just alter subtly how easy it is to see your fingerprint. Also, the angle that you put your finger on the fingerprint reader, the position of the fingerprint. So there is an algorithm that determines how likely it is that it is your fingerprint and not somebody else's fingerprint. So it is not black and white, right? Secondly, your fingerprint, whilst being sometimes difficult to read, doesn't fundamentally change. So whilst you may think that you actually need to be touching the fingerprint reader in order to log into the device, you're in fact, in the background, the fingerprint is converted effectively into an image. It's just, a series of bits, zeros and ones. So you can take biometric fingerprint data, and then feed that information into the phone. So you don't actually need a finger to be touching the fingerprint reader. Now, there are some quite clever things that are done in order to to check that the fingerprint should at least have been coming from the right sort of phone. So there are capacitive readers, optical readers, there's ultra thin, ultrasonic, and so on. However, the researchers basically took the source fingerprint image and then rendered it according to the various most common methods for storing the fingerprint data, and then could literally just keep on injecting fingerprints. There's a very detailed write-up of the flow required in order to do this. And the outcome is basically that Android phones will permit an unlimited number of bypass attempts, effectively allowing for brute force. So all of them, even if there was a lockout set, will continue to allow you to test fingerprints against them. Apple SE, Apple 7, they tested against. Both of those, iPhone SE, iPhone 7, both of those did successfully lock out after 15 attempts. So I think that's added some attempts beyond the number that are that you can set in settings, but basically it's too low to allow brute forcing of fingerprints. So partly that's because Apple has put more effort into protecting fingerprints. It encrypts fingerprint data in transit within the device. So interception is harder to do, harder to execute. Devices can be brute forced in relatively short amounts of time. So, the majority of Android devices can be brute forced in 7-8 hours. Some devices are better than others, but pretty much all devices, within a day of brute forcing, you would have got into almost every Android phone. This is very interesting. I think the reason I find this interesting is something I've spoken about before, that using biometrics as authentication is seen at the moment as being highly secure, but I actually think that it is less secure than using open password. And the reason for that being exactly this: once your fingerprint, let's say your iris scan or whatever it may be, has been recorded and stored digitally, if that digital version gets leaked somehow, data breach, whatever it may be, unless it was very well encrypted, once decrypted, can be reused to authenticate against any devices that you've used biometrics against. you can't change your biometrics. You know, no matter how hard you try, you won't change your fingerprint. You won't change your iris scan. You could possibly change your face, but you know, we are in the realms of science fiction there. So for sophisticated attackers, biometrics is an area I think we will see an uptick of attacks against that, especially as things like fingerprint databases get leaked. Everything gets leaked in the end, you know. But you can't change it, so you are stuffed. Yeah, curious one. Very convenient, not necessarily very secure. I personally would recommend that if you have, you know, if you are particularly bothered about privacy and security of your devices, stick to username and password with you know, something like an authenticator app based 2FA. That's quite good. Make sure that you know, any authentication credentials are stored in an encrypted way, and don't reuse things. You know, and again, biometrics is one of those. Well, yeah, you're reusing it every time. Every solution, every service that you authenticate to using biometrics is reusing the same. So if it's compromised once, it could be compromised many times. So, you know, there we go. Anyway, that is probably enough from me for today. I hope you have a good start to the week, and I will speak to you all again tomorrow morning.